Hey y'all, welcome back to Chocolate Covered Pages. I'm Kiona, and today I am going to be talking about 6 books that I think black women should read. In no way is this the full list. I'm only talking about 6 books, so I'm only literally scratching the surface. Hopefully I can get into some more books that black women should be reading in future videos. So let's get into it. So first I'm going to start off with a couple of OGs, and then I'm going to make my way to some more recent books. So the first book I want to talk about is The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor. This book means everything to me. It absolutely means everything to me. This is Gloria Naylor's first book. I read this book for the first time in my mid-20s or so. I had watched this movie years and years and years ago. I never knew it was a book. Let's just say that. I never knew it was a book. I only had watched a movie with Oprah in it. And I was young when I had watched the movie. And I remember the movie being really, really good. And somehow I, came across the fact that it was a book. And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I gotta get that, And I read the book and I was like, yo, like, the book is even better than the movie. Like, this is crazy. So I read it in my mid-20s, and then I decided to pick it up again in my mid-30s. And this book still hits to this day. It still hits. And honestly, I have been able to take something new from it this second time around. And let me just tell you what the book is about. This book is 7 interconnected stories from women that are living in this dilapidated building on Brewster Place. And they all just have very different stories. Pretty similar, if you ask me, like, as far as, like, their struggles. They're all having all of these different struggles, and each story tells how these women came to be in this building. Why are they there? And it's just so much to take away from this book, honestly. It will definitely pull at your heartstrings. I will tell you that if you haven't read this book already. A lot of people have read this book, and honestly, a lot of people did not know that this was a book either. So I definitely want you guys to pick this book up if you haven't already, especially if you are a black woman. Like, this book is like, it should be in like some kind of Hall of Fame or something, like a rites of passage. This is an excellent book, and it's very, very short. The next book I want to talk about is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And I mean, it's Zora, so like, again, the OG. This book is about a woman named Janie and her 3 marriages, pretty much. She goes through so much in these marriages. People call this book a romance, but I'm going to be honest, I'm one of those people that don't feel like this is a romance at all. Like, I just feel like people feel like, oh, Janie and Tea Cake or whatever. It's some things I didn't really like about Tea Cake, I will tell you that. But I still feel like there's so many takeaways from this book as far as being a black woman, and as far as, taking charge of our own life, I think is really what I personally took away from the book. Just taking charge of our own life. This book came out in 1937, and there's so many things in this book that are very much still very relevant to today. Just as far as, how much power men tend to have over your life and over your well-being, over your finances, and things of that nature. And a lot of that is in this book. And Janie was just, kind of trying to just like, okay, I'm just gonna, go along with this. But, people black women, we get tired after a while. We get tired after a while, and I just love the evolution of Janie. I will say that in this book. So if you have not picked up this book, I definitely recommend for you to pick this book up. It's just an important piece of black fiction. And of course, I have to go with the biggest OG, and that's gonna be Sula by Toni Morrison. And this book is another book that I read in my 20s. And when I first picked up this book, I don't think I got what I was supposed to get out of it, but I had to read through it again. And that's when I really was like, oh shoot, like Toni is spitting. Like, for real, like I really, like, if you just take the book at its face value, you probably won't get what you're supposed to get. Really take your time when you read this book. And I'm telling you, it's so many gems in those last 10-20 pages. You know, I would love to talk about them, but if you haven't read the book, I don't want to spoil it for you. But this is the story of a friendship between a woman named Nell and Sula, and they grow up together. The first half of this book is pretty much them growing up together as little girls, and then the second half is them as adult women, and how things completely change. And it's just the commentary on who is living the right life, and who decides what is right, and who decides what is wrong. You know, what I liked about Sula in this book is that she really did not care. She really did not care. And I want black women to read this book, because society tells us how we should be, how we should walk into a room, how, you know, that we all need to get married, and we need to have kids, and we need to do these types of things. And it's like, Sula was just like, I don't give a F what you talking about. Like, I'm gonna do what I need to do when I need to do it, to quote Jocelyn Hernandez. Okay, this book was, I could just imagine the uproar this book caused when it came out, because Sula is like one of the first black sexually free characters that we come across in black literature. And I know this book was causing all types of ruckus. I know it was. And I'm just highly privileged that I was able to get my hands on it and be able to read it and just be a part of this, because this book, again, another one, is still extremely relevant today, because we're always talking about respectability politics, and this is one of the first books that kind of talks about that. It doesn't give it the term, but it kind of talks about that as well, you know, like how the other women in the neighborhood were treating Sula. I mean, it's just so much to take away from this book, and I love it. It's marked up. My copy is marked up. I will never give this copy away, because this copy is mine. This is one of those books that I would love to just send out to black women that are in their 20s. The next book I want to talk about is Assata, an autobiography by Assata Shakur. And if you don't know who Assata Shakur is a political activist. She was a part of the Black Liberation Army. She was convicted of murder. She was convicted of murdering a state trooper on a New Jersey turnpike. And this book literally starts off with, oh, and she's also Tupac's godmother. This book literally starts off with the chase. You know, her being in the car, the state troopers chasing her on the New Jersey turnpike. And it literally goes from the chase, her being convicted, her time spent in prison, And just her looking back on her time in the Black Liberation Army. And I just feel like this book is just highly, highly important for Black women to read. Highly important. The amount of gems in this book that are written by this woman is just, you're going to be constantly highlighting. You're going to be constantly highlighting and just really wanting to take the time to just think about what you've just read. You know, she even talks about the Reconstruction era, you know, slavery, and just like how all these things have so much to do with money. She talks about Abraham Lincoln, you know, specifically, you know, how some people feel like, oh, Abraham Lincoln, you know, he freed the slaves, like he was just a, you know, a black people lover, when no, that's not why he freed the slaves. And I just love how she breaks it down in this book to really make you understand how these things came about and why. It literally goes all the way through her life, her giving birth and everything, all the way up until she escapes prison and goes to Cuba and seeks asylum there. And they, you know, the U.S. couldn't touch her when she got to Cuba. And I would love to have known more details about that, but obviously she's not going to tell us who was involved in her getting away. But I'm really nosy, and I just wanted to know, like sis, tell us who was involved, like how did it all go down. And I think that is so just dope that she was able to get out. And when I tell you, I know them people was pissed that they just could not get their hands on her, and she is in Cuba to this day. So yeah, this book is highly, highly important and highly recommended. The next book I think Black women should be reading is The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Soldier. And do I even need to explain why? I would say this book should be read as young as 16 years old. I would say that. This book is pretty much what I consider to be the Black girl's rites of passage. I read it when I was 13. I should not have been reading it that young, but you know, it's I don't know. It's what we do. I was reading, right? This book is about a girl named Winter, and Winter was living the good life, the luxurious life, when her father was a drug kingpin, and he was, you know, rich and powerful, but her father gets knocked by the feds, and Winter has to end up pretty much pivoting to try to navigate life after, you know, falling from the top, basically. I read this book when I was 13, obviously, and I read it again in my 30s. And what I will say is I definitely had a much different takeaway from this book in my 30s, which is why I recommend it for, you know, people on the younger end. Because me, personally, I just wanted to shake Winter. She was annoying me in my 30s. Like, I did not find her antics to be amusing as much as I did when I was younger. I was like, ooh, Winter's so cool. Like, she just, you know, she's a bad bitch. But at this age, I was just like, girl, you need to get it together. Like, for real, you need to get it together. Like, it's not all about you. Like, I just found her to be really stank at this age. So, yes, definitely recommending that one. The last book I want to recommend all Black women to read is going to be the one that came out the most recent, and that's going to be The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. I really enjoyed this, and honestly, I'll be straight with y'all, I don't really mess with anthologies like that unless the stories are all connected. I am not the biggest fan of stories that are just like a bunch of different stories in this book. However, I am someone that grew up in a church, and it was just something about this cover. It was just something about the subject matter of this book that just had me say, you know what? I want to give this anthology a chance. And I'm so glad that I did. Specifically recommending this for those of us that grew up in the church. There is so much to relate to in these stories about being queer, about, not having a husband, when people think that you should. It's just so much to take away from the stories in this book. And I just feel like Deisha Filial just did an excellent job. I absolutely cannot wait for the series to come out. I think it's coming out on HBO. I think HBO. Don't quote me on that. But I found some of the stories in here to be highly, highly relatable. The fact that, me personally, anytime I go back to my childhood church, somebody has something to say. They have some kind of question they should not be asking me. They have some type of comment they should not be saying to me because, I'm an adult now, but they don't care. That's the thing. Is just always feeling like you have to look a certain way, act a certain way. I really related to this book, and I think that a lot of black women will find something in at least one or two of these stories that they can relate to. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments what books would you recommend for black women to read, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.